Hi, all, and thanks for being with me. I want to talk about Gaza. Now, this is a subject that really does distress me because there seems to be a whole variety of narratives that we talk about in relation to this subject. One of them is what the IDF is doing. One of them is the uh, what the Palestinians have done or are doing, the impact, I guess, of Hamas on the Palestinian community, the horrible things that Hamas did on October the 7th, the things that Jewish people are doing in uh, in the West Bank in relation to abusing and denigrating the Palestinian people who live there, and particularly, I guess, also the other narrative is what Jewish people who have some degree of empathy. In fact, a lot of people have significant empathy for what's happening with the Palestinian people in Gaza, and don't like it, don't like what their government is doing in Israel. And then there's the other narrative, which is the way the world is viewing all of this and how we, over time, have decided that the efforts to wipe out a race of people in the way that the IDF are planning to do it is wrong. And mixed up in all of this is that anybody who claims to have a degree of understanding or empathy for the Palestinian people trapped in Gaza and the unproportionate number of deaths that there are of women and children and men, of course, who are not part of Hamas, who are not fighting this war, but are just collateral damage in this struggle, is a narrative which gets somewhat whitewashed. I think gaslit by certain people in the media because for some reason we can't differentiate between what happens to the general population during a conflict, and how sometimes the aggressive force, in this case the IDF, are behaving in ways which are catastrophic and which are, in my view, genocidal. So we get mixed up because, if you start to declare some degree of compassion and understanding for the Palestinian people, you're seen as anti-Semitic. And I don't understand that at all because I'm not. I hate. I dislike anyone who spreads hate, no matter which side of the fence you're on. I'm just as anti-Hamas as I am the IDF for what they're doing. I'm just as much anti any Palestinian who has a shot at or who denigrates an Israeli person or a Jewish person. And, I'm horrified by the two young people that were killed in Washington last week, which was a hate crime against Jewish people. So, and why is it? Why is it? And I'm confused by this. Why is it that certain aspects of the media have to declare that if you do not subscribe to the IDF's version of events and you see this as a justifiable killing of tens of thousands of people, 50,000 people at this point, why is it then that you are labelled anti-Semitic? Why turn this conflict into a religious war in this sense? I don't understand it. I don't understand how these people can view it the way that they do, how they can be blind to what actually is happening and what's being reported out of Gaza, and why it is they need to side with the IDF, not the Jewish people, because there are a lot of Jewish people in Israel who disagree with what's happening and who are anti their own government, I hasten to add, and Netanyahu's only staying on because he'll probably wind up in jail at the end of all of this. So, why is it that it becomes, if you take a stand for Palestinian people and what is happening for them, you are anti-Semitic? Well, to find the answer to this, I just need to turn to my favourite network, which is Sky News, because they are full of crazy people. And Chris Kenny and Sherry Markson are just two of them, of course. But this particular clip I'm going to show you is from a segment they put together in relation to what's happening with regard to anti-Semitism, and how they are propagating the belief that if you're against the IDF and what's happening in Gaza, then you're clearly anti-Semitic. For some reason, you can't be anti-IDF. You can't be anti-Netanyahu. You just can't be anti anything else. You just got to be, you've got to be anti-Semitic. You know, I would argue that Islamophobia plays a major role in all of this as well, but no discussion of that, of course. Okay, so let's just have a look at that video, and we'll talk about it, I guess, as we go through it, as this man says some crazy things.
Once again, we've seen horrific anti-Israeli or anti-Semitic violence. There seems to be little distinction.
So immediately, do you notice that it becomes between anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic? So the two are somehow combined together by this poor excuse for a human being, Chris Kenny.
In the two anymore. This time in the US, in Boulder, Colorado. 6 people were injured in a firebombing. People literally set on fire for daring to join a protest demanding the release of Israel's hostages. People held hostage by Hamas for more than 600 days now. Yet the price of this peaceful protest was a fire attack by a man yelling, "Free Palestine."
Palestine is free, and for us,
what we can't do when he's got Molotov cocktails.
The FBI are calling this a terror attack, and the alleged assailant, 45.
And I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, you know, there is this attack by a man who acted violently towards a peaceful protest. There is no place on this planet for this sort of behaviour. There isn't, you know. But, you know, when you equate that with people, innocent people in Palestine or in Gaza dying, you've got to wonder what people like Chris Kenny are actually seeing. So here's one man. He did the wrong thing. No doubt about that. There's no place for violence. End of story. Not going to discuss that any further. But does it make the violence in Gaza okay because it's the IDF doing it against the Palestinian people? Does that make it right? Well, I think according to people like Chris Kenny, yes, it does.
Old Mohammed Solomon is in custody. This comes after 2 Israelis were shot dead in cold blood in Washington, D.C. last month. A young couple murdered simply for being Israeli. We've seen fire bombings here in Australia, of course, fire bombings of cars, a synagogue.
And yet we do have a number, and I'll bring back to this point. So this is where I'm trying to draw the line. So we've had these instances which are horrible and should never have happened, and they're wrong. And people should face the courts, and the book should be thrown at them. I understand that. But does it mean then that somehow the IDF and the Israeli government get a pass on all of the violence, all of the terrible things that they have done? Just like Hamas should not get a pass on the violence that they've caused as well. Neither should the IDF. Neither should these people that are committing these crimes in the United States. They should not get a pass. But for some reason, it seems to me that people like Chris Kenny and the right want to give the IDF a pass.
And a childcare centre. And we've seen threats against Israelis, celebrations of their slaughter, and regular intimidation of Jewish Australians at protests. It's time that those who promote lies and misleading narratives and who shout horrible lines,
And I think this is great, because I think such as you, Chris, because of the sort of lies and misinformation that you send on a daily basis to your crazy people that listen and watch you and believe what you're saying. You know, you're just as responsible for the crazy narratives that are put out there as anybody else. In fact, you should be held, Chris, accountable for the types of things that you say that are not informing. And you'll hear some more about this in just a minute from him, about the misinformation and the blame that goes to other media for reporting what happens in Gaza.
Time that they stop to think about the possible consequences of their actions. There is one evil entity in the current Middle East conflict, and it's not Israel or the Jewish people, and it's not the Palestinian people. The evil here is Hamas, and anyone saying or doing anything that either legitimises Hamas or gives succour to these Islamist terrorists or their death cult ideology, well, anyone who does that is being reckless.
And I think so he brings in Palestine. It isn't the Palestinian people. And good on you, Chris. 10 out of 10 for at least raising that, I guess. But the point is that it's the IDF that are killing all these people. Hamas at this moment are simply trying to negotiate some sort of peace, which is not being agreed to by Netanyahu and his government. And also we must remember that there are extreme right people in Netanyahu's cabinet who want the Palestinians completely wiped out. But why not have a conversation about that as well? Why not be a little bit more balanced and see it for what it is that the Israeli government are doing and what some of their right-wing people are thinking? He doesn't talk about that because that does not fit his narrative. So the focus becomes on Hamas. Now, the focus should be on both sides, I agree, but it also should be primarily on the IDF as well.
It's not okay to shout river to the sea, echoing the Hamas slogan about eliminating Israel and all Jews from the Middle East. If you do that, you are part of the problem. It's not okay to scream about Israeli genocide, a hateful slur and one that's...
Now, this is where I really hate this man, because he's suggesting in this instance that people like myself who see this as an effort to wipe out a race of people living in Gaza, to wipe out Palestinians entirely. We would never do that. They're spread around the world. But nevertheless, in this particular instance in Gaza, to say that we're calling it a genocide, South Africa, a lot of other countries around the world, now other countries in Europe and Great Britain are saying this is a genocide and it's got to stop. So does that mean that all of us, under Chris Kenny's evaluation, are lying, are anti-Semitic? No, we are not. And Chris, you need to take your finger out from up your ass and start to understand that there are many of us who simply do not like seeing a group of defenseless people killed. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what country you come from, ethnic background, whatever. It doesn't matter. The fact that you are insisting that just because we choose to call this a genocide, which it is, and there are people in the IDF who will say, or people in the government who will basically announce it as a genocide, and the fact that the ICC has lent in that direction, that it is a genocide, should be enough indications to you that you are wrong on this issue. And you need to do something about it. Well, we never will.
Wildly inaccurate. The Palestinian population has grown faster than Israel's, and no country at war has ever taken such clear efforts to avoid civilians and war.
Now, I can't even believe he said that. There is no evidence, given the number of hospitals that have been bombed, the number of medical people, practitioners that have been killed, doctors and nurses and so forth, the number of humanitarian workers, including an Australian, who have died, have demonstrated that they do not take enough care to do what Chris Kenny is suggesting that they're doing. He is lying to us. He is an abominable, disgusting, disgraceful human being who should not have a job in the media at all. Now, there is more I could play, but I just get more and more worked up whenever I watch it, so I'm not going to. But I'm going to ask you to subscribe to my channel, to ring the bell, further notifications. It doesn't cost you anything. Share my videos, please. I'd really appreciate that. Let me know what you think about people like Chris Kenny and what you think about Gaza, anti-Semitism. I would suggest that most of the people that watch my videos are not anti-Semitic, but we know when there's a wrong. We know when something is happening that is damaging, that is hurting people, and in this case, killing innocent people, and it has to stop. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.